Hi there, and welcome to The Daily Gardener, an almanac of garden history, literature, and small botanical joys. I'm Jennifer Ebling, and today is May 27th. Spring always feels a little unsettled to me until I plant my kitchen garden. It sits just outside my deck door, and it's close enough that I can step outside barefoot with a pair of scissors in my hand. The thyme settles first, then the dill and the parsley, rosemary, sage, mint that refuses containment, which is fine by me, and then later, basil in generous handfuls. I tuck a few pots near the table and by the chairs, slipping in lemon verbena so that the air carries something bright. All winter long, food feels finished when it leaves the stove. But in spring, there's something waiting just outside the door. A handful of green. A torn leaf, a small correction. I love my kitchen garden. Here's today's garden history. It was on this day in 1865 that the English naturalist Charles Waterton died at Walton Hall in Yorkshire, England. He was 82 years old. When Charles was a boy at school, two older boys dared him to kill a goose. Although he felt it was wrong, Charles did it anyway. And when the schoolmaster heard what happened, he punished the older boys, but not Charles. That mercy stayed with him. As Charles finished school, an older priest pulled him aside and said he worried that one vice might undo him, and he made Charles promise never to drink. Charles agreed, and he kept that promise for the rest of his life. As a young man in British Guiana, Charles saw how quickly animals were killed, for sport, for trade, or for habit. Once, standing on a sandbank with a group of men, Charles faced a giant caiman. He wrote, "They wanted to kill him, and I wanted to take him alive." Charles leapt onto its back and wrestled it down. The story later appeared in his popular book, Wanderings in South America. In 1806, when his father died, Charles inherited Walton Hall. He was only 24, yet somehow already certain of what he wanted. His first instinct was to build a wall around his property, not to keep people out, but to keep wildlife safe inside, a place where there would never be hunting. The wall was 3 miles of stone and 9 feet high. Charles liked to say that he paid for it with the wine he did not drink. While his neighbors measured their worth by the quality of their hunts, Charles measured his by how many birds found refuge inside his walls. Herons stood there unstartled, even when gunshots rang out beyond the wall. People would later call it the world's first bird sanctuary. Then, in the 1830s, when a soap factory was built nearby, smoke began drifting across Walton Hall. Charles successfully sued the factory, arguing that the fumes damaged his property, killed the trees, and fouled the land. In 1829, when he was 47, Charles married Anne Edmonston, who had been promised to him 3 decades earlier when he was exploring Guyana with Anne's father. Anne was just 17 when they wed. Not long after giving birth to their son Edmund, Anne died. That's when her sisters came to Walton Hall to raise their nephew. After Anne's death, something else happened. Charles began sleeping on the floor and rising at 3 each morning to pray. It became another lifelong discipline. At the end of May in 1865, Charles was working in the park when he fell hard. He knew the injury was serious, but he took the time to give a blessing to his grandchildren and family. In his introduction to Wanderings in South America, Norman Moore wrote this: Charles was buried on his birthday, the 3rd of June, between two great oaks at the far end of the lake, the oldest trees in the park. He had put up a rough stone cross to mark the spot where he wished to be buried. Often on summer days, he sat in the shade of these oaks, watching the kingfishers. Moore remembered Charles once, saying, "Cock Robin and the magpies will mourn my loss, and you will sometimes remember me when I lie here." At the foot of the cross marking Charles's grave is the inscription that he wrote for himself. "Pray for the soul of Charles Waterton, whose tired bones are buried near this cross." And it was on this day in 1793 that the Scottish soldier and gardener Robert Kyde died in Calcutta, India. He was 47. By then, Robert had lived and worked in Bengal for more than 20 years. In 1770, when he was still a young officer there, famine swept through the region. Monsoon rains failed, rice crops collapsed, and millions died. Robert could not change the weather, but he believed something else could change. What people chose to plant and what else could grow alongside rice when the monsoon failed. Robert believed famine could be softened if more reliable food crops were grown alongside rice. So he began experimenting with plants. And in 1787, at 41, Robert secured 300 acres at Shalimar, a stretch of marshland on the opposite side of the Hooghly River from the city of Calcutta. The land was difficult, wet, and unstable, and canals were dug to make more soil usable. There, Robert planted novel food plants that could survive difficult conditions. He chose sago palms, Matroxylon sago, because they store starch inside their trunks. And when they are cut open, that starch can be dried into flour. Robert planted teak for durable timber and tea to see if it could thrive locally. He also selected date palms so that there would always be fruit in dry seasons. By day, Robert crossed the Hooghly River into Calcutta to serve as secretary to the military department. But by evening, he returned to Shalimar to walk the young plantings with local Mallis, gardeners, checking which species survived and which failed. Robert liked to call the garden a magazine, a military word for a storehouse of supplies. In May of 1793, as illness weakened him in Calcutta, Robert decided to write a will. He requested a simple burial at the Shalimar garden he founded, but the East India Company instead buried him at South Park Street Cemetery in Calcutta. 2 years later, in 1795, a marble urn sculpted by Thomas Banks was placed in the Shalimar Botanic Garden in his memory. And his successor, William Roxburgh, named the genus Kydia after Robert Kyde. Today, the garden at Shalimar is known as the Acharya Jagadish Chandra Bose Indian Botanic Garden. And on that riverbank, the work Robert began, testing plants against hunger, still continues alongside a great banyan, now over 250 years old, and one of the widest trees in the world, covering about 4.5 acres. In today's Unearthed Words, we hear a recipe for marigold custard from the American garden writer Helen Morgenthau Fox, born on this day in 1903. In 1933, Helen published Gardening with Herbs for Flavor and Fragrance, a book that grew out of 3 years devoted almost entirely to herbs. At her home that she called Foxton in Peekskill, New York, Helen raised dozens upon dozens of aromatic plants, seeking seeds and cuttings, experimenting in her kitchen, and recording what she learned. Helen's book describes 67 herbs and included more than 50 recipes, dishes that drew herbs out of the medicine chest and placed them squarely on the table. Among them was this older recipe for marigold custard, a dish that used marigold petals as a kind of poor man's saffron, offering color and a faint, warm bitterness. Here's Helen's documentation of the traditional preparation for marigold custard. The ingredients include a pint of milk, a cup of marigold petals, freshly gathered, a pinch of salt, 3 tablespoons of sugar, a piece of vanilla bean or a dash of nutmeg, 3 beaten eggs, and rose water, which is optional for a traditional finish. For the preparation, you infuse the milk by pounding the marigold petals in a mortar or crushing them to release their color and essence. Then add them to the milk and bring it slowly to a boil. Once the milk has taken on a yellow hue and the flavor of the petals, strain the mixture through a fine cloth. Then stir in the sugar, salt, and seasoning, vanilla or nutmeg. Then it's time to thicken, so you gradually pour the warm milk into the beaten eggs, stirring constantly to avoid curdling. Next, it's time to cook. Pour the mixture into a double boiler, or my favorite, individual custard cups. Cook gently until the custard coats the back of a spoon, or when a knife inserted comes out clean. Then into the fridge it goes so that it can be chilled before serving. You can add a dash of rose water for an authentic old world aroma. And that's what Helen reminds us, that marigolds can sub for saffron, offering color and warmth and flavor from something we deadhead without even thinking. And when it comes to marigolds, it's good to be reminded how to use them in the kitchen. Helen Morgenthau Fox knew for certain there's a whole kitchen hiding in the garden. It's time to grow that garden library with today's book, Citrus by Pierre Laszlo. This book is part of Specialty Gardens Week, which means all of this week's book recommendations focus on a particular plant or a particular practice. Nearly 100 million tons of citrus are produced around the world every year. And in his book, Pierre Laszlo traces the fruit from Southeast Asia in 4000 BC through the Roman Empire, through the gardens of Versailles, and through the canvases of Van Gogh, all the way to the orange groves of California. But first, he wants you to try something. Here's Pierre Laszlo. Take a piece of peel from a lime, lemon, orange, grapefruit. It does not matter. Bend it between thumb and index finger over a piece of paper and note the dots of oil that spurt onto it. These are the essential oils. Those tiny glands in the peel, Pierre writes, are miniature gold mines. For centuries, the oils they produce became perfumes, orange bitters, furniture wax, and some of the most valuable trade items in the world. And today, we throw away the most valuable part of the fruit. Citrus by Pierre Laszlo is the story of the fruit that changed the world, one golden peel at a time. And finally, here's something sweet to ignite the little botanic spark in your heart. It was on this day in 1832 that the New Zealand botanical artist Georgina Byrne-Hetley was born in Battersea, England. As a young woman, Georgina crossed oceans, first to Madeira and then to New Zealand, where her mother bought land near New Plymouth and named it Fernley. Georgina got married there, but not long after, her husband died suddenly. And Georgina, who was 25 years old, found herself alone with a newborn son and land that required tending. For a time, she managed the farm, but then the war started. Smoke from burning bush rolled across the hills, and homes were abandoned. The forest she loved began to thin under the press of settlement. Years later, Georgina wrote of a town hidden by the smoke of the burning bush, and of a beautiful forest fast disappearing before the tide of cultivation. By her 50s, living in Auckland, Georgina attended a lecture at the Auckland Museum. She learned how few of New Zealand's native flowers had ever been painted from living specimens. Most existed only as dried and browned sheets in herbaria. And so, Georgina began to paint them from life. She carried paper and pigments into gardens and alongside rough roads. She waited for blossoms to open, and she worked quickly because petals fold. Georgina refused to paint from dried remains and worked only from living plants. In 1888, she traveled to London to oversee the publication of her masterwork, The Native Flowers of New Zealand. While she was there, she asked the Royal Botanic Gardens at Kew for a commission so she could continue her botanical drawings. But sadly, they declined. Undaunted, Georgina returned to New Zealand and spent the last decade of her life painting the flowers of her country and fighting for their preservation until her death in 1898. As we close the show today, remember, there's something about a kitchen garden that lives just outside the door. Close enough that you don't have to plan for it. You can simply step out while something simmers. Clip a stem, pinch a leaf, and then come back in. No trek across the yard, no basket required. Just the quick trip, the snap, and the green that finds its way straight into the pot. Thanks for listening to The Daily Gardener, and remember, for a happy, healthy life, garden every day.